everyone, I want you to meet Khai Doan. Khai is a health, mindset and life coach teaching us the skills of self-mastery. His ambition is to help humanity break free from their self-imposed limitations. When I first met him, I was immediately drawn to his character, his energy, and his passions to heal the world at large.
The only reason why you can think about what it is that you want is because in a reality, that which you seek is already here.
I knew I had to do a podcast with him, so I hope you enjoy. Hey Khai, how are you?
Legend, how are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, brother. Yourself?
Yeah, I've been really taking carnivore seriously the last couple of days, and my eczema started to dramatically improve just within like 4 days. Like I'm not as itchy, but I feel like when I eat beef, if I eat too much beef, my skin gets quite itchy.
Interesting.
So I stick to lamb and organs and chicken and eggs and bone broth. And yeah, I'll most likely do this for probably the next week or two, and then I'll probably introduce low histamine based fruits until yeah, and just see how my body reacts. But you are right, like.
And what are those low histamine based fruits?
I would say low histamine based fruits would be like, I don't know, apples don't cause me too many problems. Bananas don't cause me too many problems. Papaya doesn't cause me too many problems. Watermelon does have high histamines, but it doesn't cause me too many problems. But I find that when I eat like dragon fruit, if I eat dragon fruit, then sometimes it causes me problems.
It's interesting, isn't it? Every single person has like a unique key, if you will, for your body. For me, I really can't tolerate eggs and butter and a lot of fruits like mango. Citrus fruits, I tend to be inflamed much more than things like apples. I can tolerate apples and bananas and watermelon, even though it's high histamine. I know avocado and coconut has high salicylates, but I seem to be fine with it. So we all have this key that basically we're just trying to find what suits our bodies. So anyway, thanks for coming down to this podcast. So I'm actually interviewing you.
Awesome.
You approached me from Instagram, and you told me about your story and how you're a life coach and you're practicing the carnivore diet right now, as you have eczema as well, and you're trying to cure that. I believe from the previous conversation we had, you engage in cold water therapy and saunas, hot and cold exposure, and you're just a holistic life coach. So I found you really interesting when I was talking to you. So I really wanted to get in contact and do a podcast with you to illustrate to people as well. As you were saying, many people who have eczema just have no idea how debilitating it can be. I remember you telling me, expressing how deeply you felt when you saw my video and how much it resonated. You just said people out there just have no idea how hard it is going through this suffering. I just want to share your thoughts on a bunch of topics. So
Awesome.
tell me about yourself. Yeah, for sure.
So my name is Khai, and I run an online coaching company called The Quantum Coaches. We help people break free from the shackles that are keeping them stuck. One of my shackles throughout my whole life has been the shackles of having eczema, and it has caused lots of problems throughout the majority of my childhood and into my adulthood, up until around very recently, when I discovered that a lot of the inflammatory responses that I was experiencing in my life was as a result of the environment that I was living in, the food that I was consuming, and also the moisturizers that I was using as well. So I had no idea about any of these things. And through my own deep discovery and my own painful journey with dealing with eczema, I really discovered, I guess, what I feel like to be the answers to a lot of the issues that I had. Before I began this journey, I had no idea about how bad vegetable oils were for your body. I wasn't educated on how bad steroid creams were for your body, and how bad over the counter sort of pharmacy creams and stuff were bad for your body, and how heavy they were, laced with heavy metals and chemicals and
Wow.
all of these things that we don't really get taught or educated about, because I feel like the medical industry as a whole is not really a place for people to go to heal per se, but it's a place for people to go to alleviate the symptoms of their pain. So I was getting really fed up of living a life where I was constantly trying to mask these symptoms without actually addressing the root cause. And as you very well know, the root cause of these issues are all of the toxic chemicals inside of our body, you know, all of the things that we ingest into our body, the environment that we live in, and most importantly, how that affects our gut lining. So I've been on a massive quest to make improvements. And look, I'm human at the end of the day. So sometimes I do fall off the bandwagon, and I unfortunately pay for it quite dramatically, because if anyone's watching this and they're, I guess, an eczema sufferer, they would know just how bad it can get. And for me, you know, throughout my whole life, I would just, I felt like I wasn't free to just be myself, and I wasn't free to express who I truly was, because I was always in pain. I was always scratching, and I was always just uncomfortable. Even to this day, I'm still going through that. And it's because it's hard to fully commit, you know, when there's so many distractions and there's so many things that potentially get in one's way to healing.
Mm.
But yeah.
So when you said you fall off the bandwagon, you mean you have cheat meals?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm not. Since speaking with you very recently, I've decided to actually fully commit to myself and, you know, prioritize my body and my skin and my health.
Mm. And what would the cheat meals be?
Yeah. So, you know, going out to restaurants and eating, at times I might eat a bit of gluten, or I might eat a bit of dairy. So this is another thing, right?
And
People
what's
don't,
gluten? Is that bread?
yeah, bread, sometimes pasta, very, very rarely pasta,
Mm.
mainly bread at cafes, or bread
Yeah.
when you go out to dinner, et cetera, et cetera.
It's very hard because when you're out there with friends and everyone's eating, it's very difficult to assimilate yourself in that environment if you're refusing to eat with them. It's a cultural bonding situation, and like that's why people like to drink together, because if two people suffer together, there's a bond formed. And if
Yeah.
you're eating the same food, there's also a bond, and there's a separation there by eating something else. So I get it, it's very difficult. When I go out to eat, I always ask the chef to please prepare this meat without any seed oils, no canola oil, no vegetable oils. Please just cook it in front of me. And it's very difficult because sometimes, even though they do that, they're still cooking on a grill that's dirty. So you can't get it perfect. And that's why when I go to eat out, I love eating out at Korean barbecue, because
Yeah.
they actually cook it right in front of you. And I ask them for a clean, that's the advantage of it, because they literally take away the stove. It's not like they're cooking behind and there's one stove that
Yeah.
they cook for everyone. They literally take away the pan, the grill, and then they put a new one down, and it's fresh. And I just feel reassured, and I can go home and I'm not fearing whether I'm going to react today or tomorrow. So that's what I usually do when I eat out. But I get it. It's really difficult to not cheat when you're doing this diet.
In order to fully heal your eczema, you do need to follow an elimination diet.
That's right.
However, once you've gotten to the promised land and you've actually, you know, alleviated or completely removed a lot of the symptoms of the itchy skin, the dry skin, all of these things, you can slowly start to split test things that work. You know,
Yeah.
even though plants do have certain plant defense chemicals, They have been ingested by humans for thousands of years. So I'm not totally pro carnivore, and I'm also not pro vegetables. I just want to do what's best for my body.
Yeah, of course, man.
Yeah.
Like for me, I haven't. I've cut out all vegetables, but occasionally I've tried. So far, the only vegetable I've tried is a carrot, because the root vegetables, from the research I've done, are less toxic, less. They have less anti-nutrients than things like legumes. Legumes are the worst. Nuts are the worst. So growing up, I was already allergic to nuts and legumes. So it absolutely resonated with me when I saw Paul Saladino's spectrum of plant toxicity.
Yeah, 100%. I would
But
say if you are going to, you know, pursue this quest of truth, I would start with the elimination diet, and then I would research about oxalates.
yes, lectins, oxalates. So those are anti-nutrients that you find in the vegetables. Yeah, if you're just hearing this and this is fresh to you, many people believe that like animals have a defense mechanism, they have fight or flight. Well, it's actually proven that, well, many people believe that vegetables don't have any defense mechanism. Like you can just pick the leaf off the tree and eat it. That's not the case at all. Oxalates, spinach are very high in oxalates. So
Yeah.
that is their defense mechanism. They don't want, the plant doesn't want you eating it, otherwise it's going to die. So its defense mechanism is to poison you with defense chemicals and anti-nutrients. For example, in broccoli, you have two chemicals, which is myrosinase and glucoraphanin, and they actually are compartmentalized in different cellular structures, and they don't mix unless you eat it because it's too toxic for the plant itself. But when you eat broccoli, they combine and they form this toxic chemical called sulforaphane, and that only forms as a defense chemical to mess up your gut lining. And that's what a lot of people don't know, that there's actually a lot of side effects, if you will, to these vegetables. Yes, there's benefits, but there's also these anti-nutrients that are just causing autoimmune issues in many people. So if you have eczema, that's exactly what you need to avoid.
100%. I agree. It also requires a lot of sacrifice. You know, people don't actually realize the sacrifice that's required to completely change your lifestyle. You have to start learning to say no versus learning to say yes to everyone. And you have to prioritize yourself first and how you feel first. Because not only do you feel really good when you eat good, you look really good, your energy is really high, you don't scratch as much, you know. Most eczema sufferers, if they're severe eczema sufferers, they know the feeling of scratching on your bed sheets and then waking up and then blood being on your bed sheets. Well, they
Or your
know the feeling,
clothes.
yeah, or your clothes, and they know the feeling of jumping in the ocean and not being able to stay in the ocean for as long as everybody else, because every time you do, your skin is literally feeling like it's about to burn off, you know. So there are ways that you can go around that, but you have to ask yourself the question, is it important enough for me to commit to that? You know, I have a friend and she's not an eczema sufferer exactly. However, she really kind of helped me on this path by showing me and educating me on all of these, you know, different ways to eat, and the elimination diet and clean water and, you know, organic produce and all of these things. And she doesn't eat out at all. Like she hasn't eaten out for
Yeah,
years,
I'm the same.
you know?
Yeah.
So there are other ways to learn to socialize, and there are lots of things, and I guess you can call them hacks, that you can do to make your journey easier. But just know that if you are going to commit to this journey, it is a journey and it requires a commitment. And the biggest thing that's going to happen, especially at the very beginning of your journey, if you are to consider an elimination diet, which I would highly recommend, is there's going to be a period where you start experiencing what's called the keto flu. And it's when your body and your brain starts to crave to sugar, and you start to look into your pantry for things that you can consume that are sweet, because our whole life we've been trained as a society to consume carbohydrates, and then those carbohydrates end up getting stored in our body as glucose, right? But a benefit of, I guess, the elimination diet, or more specifically eating more of an animal-based diet, is if you eat the right amount of fat to protein ratio, then you start to transition your body from using glucose as energy to ketones. And there's so many benefits to that. I wouldn't say it's sustainable forever, but for anyone wanting to lose weight, for anyone that's wanting to heal their skin, for anyone that is, wanting to just feel overall better, more clarity, more focused, the elimination diet is the easiest hard thing that you can do.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, but just on that note, if you're in a state of ketosis, especially with autophagy, it's an optimal way of being, not forever, but while you're healing. If you have any qualms about this, there's the Carnival Code, which is written by Paul Saladino, and he talks about the Inuit tribes and the Maasai tribes who have amazing optimal health. I believe it was in like around the 1950s. Only about 1% of their population statistically had atherosclerosis and heart disease and cancer and osteoporosis, whereas 33% in America had those diseases at the same time. So clearly they were just thriving. And it's interesting because now that carbohydrates and processed food have been reintroduced, now that we're in a modern world, their levels of disease have elevated.
Massive.
So yeah, so you can't really say that's conclusive, but you can see that you can read between the lines and see what's going on.
Well, I would say just on that note, I believe that the biggest reason why we are getting sick is not necessarily, fruits, vegetables, meats, et cetera, et cetera. It's the quality of the produce in which it came. So at the very least, if you are going to start small, start by being strict on organic only, at least for a couple of months, and see how your body feels, because it is a significant difference. Food carries with it energy, right? But if that energy is being masked by sprays, by, if you eat animals, by growth hormones, by antibiotics, all of these things contribute to an unhealthy body, to a diseased body. And if you can prioritize eating food that is natural, that comes from Mother Earth, and prioritize that into your daily life, you'll start to see results just by doing something as simple as that.
Diseased. I've never thought of it like that. I guess that's maybe the etymology of the word, but yeah, it's great. On the top of my head, I can't remember the exact statistic, but around 2000 to 2010, they started spraying all this glyphosate on the produce, and then straight away, as a reaction, in the next year, so many people started to have gluten intolerances. So, Dr. Fasano actually talks about this. Gluten affects everyone, not just people with celiac disease or autoimmune disorders. It affects everyone. People can deal with it better than others.
Yeah.
But it permeates that epithelium lining of your gut and activates cytokines and causes inflammation. If you're having a hard time, gluten is the number one. What I did was I started slowly eliminating foods one by one. So I started by eliminating gluten, and then eliminating grains, and eliminating dairy, and eliminating vegetables, until all I had left was meat. And that gave me the time I needed to reset my gut. And now that I'm completely healed, I can start reintroducing foods and then testing these foods. At one point, for a year, I was just eating meat, avocados, coconuts, and honey. The latter only 5% of the time. So 95% of the time, just meat. So today, I've actually reincorporated fish back into my diet and a whole plethora of fruits. My gut's healed, and I'm sure the same will happen to you. So Michaela Peterson is still on 5 years in strict meat. She actually reached out to me at one point, and I was asking her what else she eats, and she says she eats sashimi now, and she can tolerate raw honey, which I do too. Once you heal yourself, you can just access a whole plethora of new foods. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, so with your clients, what do you offer them? Do you talk about diet and holistic health in terms of cold water therapy and saunas?
The business is transitioning more into that direction as we speak currently. I'll be running live events very soon here on the Gold Coast and soon around Australia. And I want to be showing people how to really conquer their life.
Mm.
And that's kind of one of the biggest foundations of the thing that we teach here. So my number one objective is to really do my best to serve humanity so that they can let go of, I guess, their self-imposed limitations and the things that are getting in the way of living in a higher vibration. You see, you can make all of the money in the world and you can strive towards your career, but if you're not taking care of the most important vessel that you'll ever have, which is your body, it doesn't matter. There's a very, very beautiful quote that I always share with my clients, and it's from the Dalai Lama. He was once asked by a news reporter what surprised him most about humanity. And the Dalai Lama said, man, because man will spend the first half of his life spending all of his time in order to accumulate money.
Mm.
And then he will spend the second half of his life spending all of his money to get back his time and health.
Yeah.
And as a further result, man is so anxious about the future and about the past that he can't enjoy this present moment. And then as a further result, he lives as if he will never die and then eventually dies having never really lived. So
Wow.
that's a big
Very
quote.
profound.
Yeah, it's a very profound quote that I share with all my clients, and it's had a profound impact on my life because it's really helped me understand how important the present moment is. You
Yeah.
know, when we are suffering in our body, the present moment feels like hell. But when we are free in our body, free to express, free to love, free to explore, free to adventure, then I truly believe that the present moment becomes, you know, in some words, nirvana, ecstasy, bliss, joy, love. And I think that's really what human beings are consciously and unconsciously, knowingly and unknowingly optimizing for in their life.
Yeah. In your 20s, you're healthy naturally. And so people don't really start to consider how to optimize your health until 30 and 30 plus. Because people say it's like, oh, I can't really handle the drinks as much, or I can't handle the junk food as much. Oh, my joints are getting stiff. So in a way, it shouldn't be like that. But for me, I'm kind of grateful that I went on this journey for 3 years of suffering because I'm still in my 20s, and now I've found the right diet that can sustain me for the rest of my life, and the right routine, the right exercise, the right sauna, the right cold water therapy. And people just neglect their health, as you said, until it's too late. By the time it's 30, 40, and like say, worst case scenario, cancers are manifesting, it's just way too late. You have to start considering your health as early as possible.
Yeah. I always say that we get we get nudged by the universe in 3 steps. The first step is a light feather, and that feels like a tickle. For us, it's, you know, a little bit of scratching. The second is we get hit by the brick. And this is like when we have a breakout and it's really uncomfortable. And I'm just using the context of, you know, eczema and
Yeah.
dermatitis sufferers. But then the third is we get hit by the McTruck. And some people, unfortunately, need to wait until they get hit by the McTruck before they decide to make a change. And, you know, my job, and I imagine your job, is to help people before they get hit by the truck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't have to suffer. Suffering is a choice. Life is painful, you know, don't get that twisted. It's definitely painful. We go through pain, but to suffer is a choice.
Yeah. You said earlier higher vibration. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean.
yeah.
But I find it an interesting topic because this is obviously completely far away from, well, modern medicine. And they would never refer to higher vibration. But
Yeah.
from a spiritual perspective, like I can understand what you're talking about. But I want to hear what you think it means.
Yeah. Really good question. So, first and foremost, we are vibrational beings. If you look deeply within, I guess, all of our cells and even beyond that, the Buddhists or the people in the Buddha's time, and even before that, have a word and it's called galapa. And in English, galapa translates to subatomic particle. What a subatomic particle is a vibration. And if you look at everything physical and non-physical in this entire universe, it is made up of galapas or these subatomic particles. What scientists have now discovered is that nothing is actually physical. Actually, if you look at, physical matter, it's made up of 99.999999999% empty space.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that we know that, and now that we understand that, we actually can start to discover within ourselves how to live life in a higher vibration. So every single experience within our body comes with it a vibrational frequency. If you're living your life in sadness because your skin is in pain, or if you're living in a lot of fear and you have a lot of negative thoughts, then even if the sky out there is blue, it's going to feel gray. And so what I discovered is that when we live life in a high frequency, and maybe it's too much to cover, during this podcast, I would highly recommend you look into an author named Dr. David Hawkins. So Dr. David Hawkins is an amazing author who wrote many books, one of which is called Healing and Recovery. The original book that I read from him, though, was Letting Go. But I want to, really sort of inspire you guys to read his book, Healing and Recovery, because it will actually help you heal a lot of the things that are going on in your body. But he discovered through kinesiology and muscle testing and years and years and years and years of therapy that there was, in fact, what is called a map of consciousness. And society as a whole live at a certain frequency or at a certain level of consciousness. And this level of consciousness normally causes one to live life in ignorance, fear, guilt, shame. And what he discovered is when you live in a lower vibration, when you're living in, guilt, or when you're living in anger, when you're eating food from guilt, or when you're eating food from fear, or when you're eating food out of sadness, when you're doing inputs in your life that cause you to feel sad, like scroll on social media, or, all of the things that, we experience in our life that cause us to feel these lower vibrational frequencies, then really what ends up happening as a result of that is our world around us reflects and mirrors the way that we feel on the inside. And so what he discovered is the prophets and the sages of the past before us, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, Jesus, all of the profound teachers that we know, Confucius, he discovered that these people lived in an elevated state of consciousness. In other words, they lived in a state of enlightenment, right? Enlightenment. And we are all naturally high vibrational beings. When we come onto planet Earth, when we come into this physical body as souls or as energetic beings, energetic frequencies coming into this human experience, for the first 5 years of our life, we are filled with presence. We are filled with enlightenment, right? When the child is sad, the child is sad. The child isn't sad trying to figure out how it's going to be happy. When the child is happy, it's just happy. It's enjoying its life. But then as society starts to impose its indoctrinations and its beliefs on us, we start to become trapped. And first, we become trapped in our mind because that's where it starts. Then we start to become trapped in our beliefs. And then once that happens, we start to become trapped in our body. And then we start to live the program or within the paradigm that our society, our culture, our ancestors, our conditioning have imposed on us. And so the way that one can really alleviate themselves from suffering and not just heal from eczema, but really ask themselves the question, if I have been created by a higher source of infinite intelligence, right? If you're religious or not religious, you cannot deny that there is something greater than just our meat bodies. Why do we have the capacity to feel love? Why do we have the capacity to feel fear? Why do we understand this experience of duality in the human experience? And it's because there is some form of infinite intelligence guiding us. So doesn't it make sense for one to actually live their life in a place where they can feel as connected to this source of infinite intelligence as humanly possible, so that they can ride the wave of life rather than always crashing against it? And so Dr. David Hawkins, in his many, many books, really talks about how one experiences life based on the level of consciousness or the frequency or the vibrational frequency that they're living in. And when you can really understand just how simple it can be for you to tap into what I call the truth of who you are, remember who you truly are, then you will stop doing all of the things that have been keeping you trapped. You won't ingest the same information. You won't ingest the same food. You won't think the same way. You won't feel the same way. You'll feel completely different. It's almost like once you have, walked through the door of the path of your truth, even if you walk back, you're always going to know that there is something better. Except a lot of people don't know that there is something better. So they will spend their lives chasing, seeking, trying to find new experiences, new foods to taste, new things outside of themselves in order to feel whole. But when you can really understand that you're already whole as you are, my mentor says you're perfect, complete, and whole as you are, then you start to move towards the steps of being free. And I think that's objectively what humanity is doing their best to do, or its best to do. It's just the way that we think we're going to get there is not the most efficient way.
It was a very well-versed and in-depth and nuanced response. So you can tell how much depth you've done in research of that. But I completely understand where we're living in this society where many are just trapped on social media, many are anxious, many are depressed, and it's becoming this status quo, this normalization of depression. Everyone you see just the rates of depression's going up, and it's just common. Oh, I feel anxious today. It's very rare to find someone like yourself and like myself. When I meet these people, you can tell they're vibrating on a higher frequency. You can tell that they have self-confidence. They walk through the room and they don't need external gratification. They're not posting all the time to get validation. They're not searching for the next meal to invigorate them, or something or the next movie, or the next bigger car, the next iPhone. And then the next iPhone coming, iPhone 15, people tell me, oh, you're going to get the iPhone 15? I couldn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason I'd be interested is if it's quality for videoing like our podcast, but really I don't care about those external materialistic things, because everything I need is in my own body. And I think once you find that higher vibrational frequency, which when you said it, I exactly understood what you meant, but a lot of people don't even know this thing exists because they don't consider it.
The crazy thing, they think that.
Well, let me just say that once you resonate on that higher vibrational frequency, you don't need anything else, and you just become holistic and complete. It doesn't surprise me at all that I managed to heal myself, considering that I found this place of just completeness and purity of mind and functioning on a higher level.
Yeah, anyway. Like brain fog is a real thing. Like it's a real thing, and it's caused by what we ingest, not just from food, but also from information inputs. See,
that's right.
I found myself in a very, very hard place a couple of months ago. A couple of challenges happened in my business, and then I started to really get in my head. And then I would spend many, many hours every day scrolling on social media mindlessly to try to numb my pain. Because we all have coping mechanisms for when we're stressed, right? Some people it's pornography, some people it's gambling, some people it's drugs, some people it's eating. Mine was food and social media. And at the end of last month, I realized just how much social media was costing me in my life. And so I made the conscious effort at the very end of last month to discontinue social media use. And I only use social media to produce content now. That's the only reason why I use social media. And even then, I'm producing content seldomly because it's not my main revenue generator. So, there's two energies of, I guess, how we move through the world. The first energy is consumption energy, right? And we need it. But if we're not mindfully consuming the things with intention, right, whether it be food, information, environment, people, then what ends up happening is we become indoctrinated by what we're consuming, and then we become a slave to it. But then there's another sort of, maybe it's a school of thought, which is production energy, or hunting energy. If you can really learn to step into that energy and learn to discover your purpose, discover why you're here, know why it is that you wake up in the morning, then what ends up happening is this whole world of procrastination just starts to dissipate, and it no longer exists in your life. And you start to have mental fortitude, and you start to have clarity on your direction and where it is that you're going and what it is that you're moving towards, right? I always say to my clients, you are either going to live life by your values, or you are going to live life by someone else's. And so you have the conscious choice in each moment what you decide. You have the choice. But this is the crazy thing. People don't realize this. People don't understand this. They think that the way that it is the way that it has to be. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to go through all of your skin conditions and all of your trauma. And there are people that you can go to. There are places that you can go to. There are books that you can read. There are videos that you can watch. There are podcasts that you can listen to start the healing journey. But it requires a commitment. It requires a sacrifice. It requires a willingness to change. And unfortunately, most people say that they're willing, but they're not really. They say that they're committed, but they're not really. And
it's like the pill versus changing your whole lifestyle. It's very easy to opt for the one solution. I'm just going to take a pill versus change your diet, change your health, change your routine, change your holistic exercise. And the doctors don't help either. I mean, they tell you there's no cure for eczema. So it's already placing your mind in this box and imprisoning it, and not allowing you to think outside that it's actually curable, and it's just about fixing your diet.
100%.
How did you get into all of this, finding this vibrational frequency? I mean, most people don't come across this until they, maybe they, for someone with eczema, they're forced into it through years of pain. For me, that's kind of how I fell into this place. I mean, I was an actor as well, and people were getting me as exercise routines in acting to meditate. And when I was meditating, I was just so relieved, and all of the angst of the world was just removed from my shoulders. And from there, I became more spiritual, and I was interacting with people who were talking about healing your gut and using the sauna and going into cold water therapy. And they started talking about functioning on a higher level. And they were saying words like affirmations. Like, I was reading books by Napoleon Hill, thinking it was a finance book, Think and Grow Rich. But the whole book, he just talks about autosuggestion, which is kind of manifestation, if you will, because the mind can't tell the difference between, like, if you're driving and you say, I'm not going to hit that car, your mind doesn't really focus on the not. It just focuses on hit that car. So your mind, I mean,
can't process negative.
Yeah, that's right. So you're more likely to hit the car. So instead of saying that, I'm going to drive safely. Or for me, when I'm performing, I'm going to give I'm going to give an amazing performance. I'm going to give an amazing speech, or whatever. It's those positive affirmations. I'm going to heal. When I was sick every single day, and to this day, when I go into the ocean, which I'm going to go to the ocean after this interview, I go in there and I say 3 times to myself, I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. I'm grateful for this life. Just saying things like that just allow you to be functioning on a higher level. Yeah. So I'm curious, what made you discover this higher frequency, and all of this world of spirituality, and the word you said before, a galapa, amazing word.
Yeah. Uh, so my background is someone that has spent his life suffering a lot through experiences that I've had, through, my upbringing. I experienced a lot of pain and suffering. And through that pain and suffering, similarly to the story of the Buddha, I wanted to figure out why. I wanted to figure out why. And I eventually found God. And I really started to understand in my life that He loves me just like He loves you. And He wants you to live life in His garden of Eden. However, it says in the Bible, for he who has, more shall be given. But for he who does not have, even that which he has shall be taken away. And most people are living life in the latter. And if you don't know what that quote means, it's you are already the abundance, the joy, the love, the gratitude, the success, the fulfillment that you're seeking for in your life. The biggest difference is, do you believe it? And, as you were saying, man, so in NLP, there are two types of motivation. You can be away from motivated, or you can be towards motivated. Away from motivated is when you're focused on what you can't do and what you shouldn't do, or what you don't do, or what you wouldn't do. And these are all negations, and your mind can't actually process negative information. Your subconscious mind, which programs 95% of your life, programs everything that you experience, and it just processes it as if it's, keeping you alive, because it has one function. The subconscious mind has one function, and it's to keep your heart beating and to keep you alive. However, the way that it does that is purely dependent on how you program it. And so if you're programming your mind with negative thoughts, with limiting beliefs, with negations, with all of these things that society has indoctrinated you with, then you become a byproduct of society's hypnotism. And I started to understand this through my own self-discovery. I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to live the life that I have lived. I've traveled through much of the world, and I have always been a seeker. I just didn't know it at the time. And now I am very aware of it. And I have this insatiable hunger to seek for the answers and to seek for the truth. But it started from a place of suffering. How I said before, suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable. Well, I used to think that suffering was inevitable and we have to suffer through life, because that was my model of the world. That was how I experienced reality. I used to feel like God was punishing me because He gave me eczema. But then I soon realized that maybe He didn't give me eczema. Maybe something else gave me eczema.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to go too deep into conspiracies on this call, but let's just put it this way. When planet Earth was created and duality was experienced, and what duality is the understanding of good and evil. In order for us to understand what good is, there is a belief that we have to also understand what evil is. But vibrationally speaking, if we actually go back to the map of consciousness, if, let's say, the bottom level of consciousness is, operating from fear and shame and guilt and apathy, is where most people are living. Well, doesn't it make sense that there is a pole opposite, which is love, gratitude, joy, fulfillment, abundance? And we've all felt these emotions at some point in time. And that's why when you hear my words, you know that there is something more. If you're suffering right now, you know that there's something more, because in your cells, you have felt it when you were this infinite source of intelligence that came into your physical body as a child. And so my quest for learning, my quest for the truth came about from suffering, right? Just like many and many of the teachers before us. And if you're suffering right now, I'm telling you right now that it's for a reason, but it doesn't have to remain the way that it is, you know? And so I realized this, and I have just been on a massive quest to find the greatest teachings on planet Earth to learn how to set myself free.
Yeah, that's amazing. You said earlier, it's not just about the food you eat, it's about the information you consume.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's great. I mean, the starting point is food because so many people are just eating the wrong thing, and that's why they feel so sick, and that's why it traps their mind in this negative state. I mean, even studies done on severing your vagus nerve, which connects the brain to the gut-brain axis, it showed to improve Parkinson's disease with patients who severed that vagus nerve because the inflammation from the food they're eating is no longer affecting their brain, and therefore their Parkinson's levels reduced. So, I mean, how much for depression and anxiety? You see Jordan Peterson, who's also on a meat diet. He says he no longer takes his antidepressants because he can function now. He can think clearer because he's no longer polluting his body with bad food. So food is one thing. If you haven't fixed your food, that's the first thing you need to do. I think that's the major thing that causes the most inflammation. But then the next thing is what you're consuming in information. So, I mean, we're living in a time where there's a lot of fear. We might be on the brink of war.
We are on the brink of war. Look at Israel right now.
Yes, that's right. I mean, there's all of this information I know that's being flooded onto my phone 24/7 of just kids being blown to bits and just such, talking about higher vibrational energy, just really the lowest of vibrational energy. You see these kids and they have no dignity at all. Like there was a video I just saw where you could see his penis was out and his face was blown to bits, his leg was off and he was screaming. And there was these doctors trying to revitalize him, and his skin, which was brown, was looking white from the ash. And so we're just living in this time. Not just that, but medically as well. We just came from a pandemic in 2020 where everyone functioned in this state of fear. There was just this almost, I'm not going to say mass psychosis, but really where everyone was just, some people do believe it was mass psychosis because it wasn't a scientific debate. It was just fear. And people still to this day don't want to bring up, I can censor it later, but and just by just saying that word, I mean, YouTube has this algorithm where it censors and blocks your platform. I mean, we're living in a time of just mass fear. So for me, I still believe that I feel like I'm functioning on a higher frequency, even though I'm still seeing all of this negative content. And I don't believe that the answer is to live in a bubble and try to remove yourself from the negativity in the world, because that's also like toxic positivity where I'm not seeing, I'm closing my eyes, putting my head in the sand. Whereas for me, the way I deal with it is I analyze deeply what's going on. I mean, just in the carnivore diet alone, what is the truth? What is the disinformation? What is the misinformation? How can I help people out of their suffering? So yes, there is such suffering in the world, but there is also a light at the end of the tunnel, because we can use this suffering and show people how to get themselves away from it. Just like, for example, with the current state of Israel, it's such a messy political topic, but you can look at what's happening. And what I've decided to do in the last 2 weeks is I don't want, I know so many people that are just not saying anything, and it baffles me. I mean, I don't care if you side this way or that way, like it's your political objective, but I can't understand how people just don't want to talk about it. I mean, yeah, I get it. Maybe you're protecting your business, maybe you're protecting your friends and family, but on both sides, there is loss of life, and it's just so tragic. And I really believe that we should all be talking about it. And so that's my way of turning the negative into the positive by starting to create conversation. But how do you deal with information is my question. How do you deal with negative information if you're trying to maintain a higher frequency?
Yeah, really good question. There's a book that's a really powerful book, and it's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. Essentially, the foundations of the book derive from Hinduism and also Buddhism. And it teaches you how to surrender to what you're being exposed to in your life on a daily basis. Now, You can live your life intentionally, but how do you live your life intentionally when the external world has so many prompts that come with it that are trying to sway you from one way to the next, or sway you to live within their agenda, so to speak. So the Buddha discovered that human suffering is experienced the most in the body in two ways. The first is clinging on to pleasant sensations, that dopamine hit, that serotonin feeling, clinging, craving. But then what he also discovered is suffering also exists when people are running away from fear. And I discovered his teachings more specifically when I started doing what is called Vipassana meditation. And if you don't know what Vipassana is, just type in vipassana.org. It's the largest meditation organization in the world. You have to be in the retreat for 10 days, and you basically live as a monastic monk for those 10 days and really understanding inside your body what's going on. And through your own deep discovery, you start to understand that when you live life in a higher vibration, the negative information that actually starts to try to penetrate your field doesn't actually have as much effect as if you're living in a low vibration, right? And this is why when Jesus was walking along the earth and people were judging him, they were blaming him, they were beating him, they were criticizing him, he just lived with love and compassion, right? And the most important thing, because we can't control the things that happen on the outside. We really can't. We have no control over anything at all that happens on the outside. We are led to believe that we do. What we do have control, however, what we really do have control over is how we feel on the inside. And so I just intentionally live a life where I'm basically information detoxed unless I'm intentionally utilizing information to expand my level of consciousness. So I stopped using social media. So that was a big thing for me. 2, I don't listen to music. And if I do, it's specifically music to help me raise my vibration, right? Music programs you.
Mm.
So if you're listening to profanity, if you're listening to, music that objectifies women and, talks about how you should get blunt and, messed up and all of these things, and that's going to program you. And also, I don't own a TV, so I never watch TV. Actually, the only time I ever use a TV, because I've got one, is for my live virtual events. And so, I just am very, very mindful. And unfortunately, if you spend time with negative people enough and for long enough, that energy will start to be consumed by you, because we're constantly trading energy. Right now, you and I are trading energy, right? I'm trading your energy, you're trading my energy, and we're basically exchanging this energy. So you have to be mindful with the people that you spend time with, right? Your family, they may love you a lot and they may care for you, but if they're caring for you and loving you from a place of fear, which actually isn't love, it's just, fear masters love, then you have to be really mindful about that. So I choose to intentionally distance myself from people that maybe have good intentions and do think that they have my best intentions at heart, but really they're just operating from their own vibration of fear. And so we deal with a lot of negative clients. We deal with a lot of clients in pain. And so I choose to intentionally focus my time to help them heal, but then I do things outside of that to counterbalance that, like sauna. I meditate daily to ground myself. My backyard is the ocean. So I just walk out of my door and I jump in the ocean, and I do everything that I possibly can to be as connected as I possibly can. There's a saying, and I'm not sure if it's in the Bible, but I've heard it somewhere, and it's go within or go without, as above, so below. Right? And so if you really want to learn to navigate all of the negative information that you're experiencing, ask yourself the question, how much of it am I choosing to consume? how much of it am I choosing to take on? Right? The most sovereign human being on this planet is the one that takes full responsibility of their life, is the one that is prepared to let go of being the victim. And it's hard to let go of the victim because the victim has been perpetrated as a character within our identity and within our consciousness for thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe even millions or billions of years. It's hard to let go of that. It really is. But it's much harder to live in it. People don't realize that, there's a saying, and it's hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. So you just got to choose your hard. It's going to be hard regardless. I just choose to live in the hard of truth, because the truth is hard. But there's a saying, and it's the truth will set us free. And so if you can learn to live your life in what the truth means for you, what the truth feels for you, how the truth is experienced for you, and you're willing to go there, you're willing to move in that direction, then the negative information that comes into your life won't penetrate your consciousness anymore, or as much.
There's a lot of amazing points you've made there. I mean, a lot of people are, as you said, it's not about just chasing happiness all the time. You said those who run away from fear are equally as miserable.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that, because we live in a society where it's encouraged to drink, and many people drink to escape their own realities, and they watch movies for the same reason, and they get addicted to porn, or they get addicted to social media. With working out, as you said, it's you choose your level of hardship. As Jordan Peterson says, he says, choose your sacrifice. For you have two options ultimately. Do you want to live in pain that's out of your control because your body's poisoning you with eczema or autoimmune diseases? Or do you want to live in a state where you're controlling the pain because you're pushing yourself to go in the sauna where you're overheating, or you're pushing yourself to do cold therapy where you're in temporary pain and you're taking ownership of that pain, or you're pushing yourself to work out, or you're pushing yourself in diet to remove all the sources of dopamine from processed sugar and restrict yourself on just a meat diet? Because for me, when I was doing that, I had to relearn, like, there's a level of pleasure eating food. I was a foodie. I loved eating everything. And so I had to restrict that right down to just meat. And then objectively, from someone watching my life, it's quite, well, it's exciting, but it's also boring in the sense that I do the same thing every day. I eat the same meals. I go to the sauna every day. I go into the ocean. I work out, and it's the same routine because that's the discipline. It's choosing your hardship. If I didn't choose that hardship of restricting my diet, of not having a variety of food, of not exercising, of not pushing myself and punishing myself with the freezing ocean when it's winter and it's 11 degrees in the water Celsius, then I would have the punishment of horrible skin and horrible pain.
100%.
So yeah, it's about choosing your sacrifices. And the thing I find interesting about this conversation is we've talked about spirituality and God and higher timelines, higher frequencies, where someone walking into this thinking it's about a carnivore diet, we may not have answered the questions but that you are looking for, but there's a plethora of information that I give, Paul Saladino gives, Ken Berry gives. On my Instagram alone, I dissect everything you need to know on why to start a carnivore diet. But I've just ran with this conversation being about God and spirituality because I really do think that lies at the center of it all. It's about your mindset and if you don't find this is the center. If you don't find this, everything else flows from it. Yep. I mean, you can be disciplined and I mean, you're more likely to have cheat meals and slip from your diet if you're not centered and grounded and in a meditative state. So that's why I've gone with it. And I find it so interesting that you're talking about God so freely because it's almost
taboo.
Yeah, it's not taboo, but it's not loathed either. But it's discouraged in society to talk openly about.
Only now. Only in the last 100 years.
And that's what I mean. Yeah, I grew up as an atheist. My dad's atheist, and I grew up very scientifically. One of the first books he gave me was Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, and I
Yeah.
was reading just about how all of these scientific deconstructions of how could light be made, and then he made the sun. The sun is light, so there's all these inconsistencies. And then if the ocean was flooded to the extent that it's described with Noah's Ark, then the humidity in the air would be so much that people would be drowning. And so he's just analyzing it so scientifically. But I think all that aside, I'm not going there. I think to take the other extreme, that we're just meat bodies, we're just sacks of atoms with no higher consciousness. We're just here living on a plane. I mean, this is faith. There's no proof I can offer, but I can't resonate with that. And my father, who's atheist, says to me, you might be clutching at God because you're afraid, or you want to have the burden of life relieved from you, and and you can access God, and it makes it easier because He can take all your pain away, because you can just divert your pain onto Him, or He can help you through. And you can, if you're doing a performance, or if you're suffering in pain, you can say, God, take my pain, help me through this.
Yeah.
So it's your way of coping. It's your coping mechanism, but it doesn't mean it's real. So, I understand that, but that's not the reason why I have faith, and why recently I've been agnostic for the longest time after I was atheist, but only recently have I been willing to say online and honestly really feel that I believe in God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me tingle, brother.
Yeah.
So
yeah. When I'm in the ocean, I see the light of the sun, and sometimes it makes me feel like weeping, that I feel so blessed to have this energy around me. And I mean, there's no way I could prove it to you, but not you, but people in general. Let me just explain to you this situation I had with a car accident, and it was just miraculous. I've actually detailed it in a lot of detail in a lot of other podcasts, but basically I was hit by a car at 80 kilometers per hour, and it was the pivoting moment in my journey, because I was depressed. I was dark. I was saying to my father, I don't know if this life is worth living. Even if I manage to survive for 60 years, by the end of it, every single day of that life will be spent in pain and suffering, because I'm dying of eczema. I don't even know how long I'm going to last. But then I had an accident where I should have died. Car hit me at 80 kilometers per hour because the girl was asleep behind the wheel. We did a 360-degree turn. My dad was driving. His foot was still on the accelerator. We started driving down the road, off the road, onto the grass. And now I had a flashback. When I was 8 years old, my dad said to me, pull the handbrake up, put the car in neutral, because that will save your life. So that flashed in my head, and I did that. That managed to slow the car so that when it hit the next car, it wasn't fatal. So at that point, I stood up and I said, I already was suffering so much from eczema. Am I now going to be a paraplegic? So I stood up and I said, wow, because all the airbags had deployed, everything was just, the car was a wreck. If you see pictures of the car, you'd question how did you manage to survive that? But I stood up, I felt my body, yes, it was a bit painful, but beyond the eczema I had, there wasn't a single scratch in my body. And then my father as well, I thought he was dead. So I was shaking him for a full minute. Like it felt like a movie, and I was just saying, Dad, wake up, wake up, wake up. Finally, he woke up, and then he was like, Brad, what happened? And he had no idea what happened because he completely passed out during the whole thing. But it's just, I mean, my dad would just say, you can't attribute every single miraculous thing to God. And he talks about Cat Stevens and how he was a musician and how he was washed away. And then he prayed to God and said, if you can survive, if you can bring me back and make me survive this, I will devote my life to you. And so another freak wave brought him all the way back to shore. And he devoted his life, I believe, to Islam. Yeah. So I'm not saying it's God, but there's all these events in my life where I've really, and I can't prove it, but I've really felt the presence of something which may be God.
Well, this is a crazy thing, brother. You have proven it by feeling it inside your body. And your body is a miraculous being,
Yeah.
right? Um, this is the crazy thing about God and not believing in God. If you don't believe in God, you're going to believe in something. You know, Richard Hawkins believes in his God, which is
Science.
the science of evolution. Some people believe in money. You're going to believe in something. I just have decided to submit my will and my beliefs into something that is as high as possible, right? As high of a frequency as possible. And the reason why people have fallen away from religion is because religion has been indoctrinated by man to keep you in the vibration of fear. So no wonder why people are veering away from religion, right? And it's because it's complete fear mongering. Don't get me wrong, there are passages in each textbook that we can take. But if it's not going to move you towards love, then you really have to question, what the truth is. What the truth is. And so for me, I know. I just know inside my cells. I've had too many events happen in my life for myself to continue to deny. The question is, will you remember? And if the answer is yes, then you experience the consequences of remembering. But if you choose not to, then you'll experience the consequences of not remembering. The choice is always yours. Like I said, you've always got a choice. And for me, I just choose to feel in my body what the truth is. And the truth is, I know that there is a creator. I just know. I'm fully convinced. You don't need to, objection handle me. It doesn't matter. It's not going to sway my opinion. Just like if you have your beliefs and if they're set in stone, I'm not going to be able to sway yours. And that's okay. That's why we've got sentient consciousness and free will. That's why we are above the traditional animal kingdom. That's why we have free thought. That's why we can have these types of conversations and these debates and these and these understandings of esoteric principles and even have a comprehension of that. So yeah, that's kind of my belief.
Yeah. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, man, it has.
Thank you for being here and sharing it with me. Before we go, I just wanted to ask if there's one thing you wanted to say to everyone. I think you've already said it, but if there's one thing you wanted to say, what would that be?
Commit to remembering who you truly are.
Beautiful.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks so much.
Blessings. I'll talk to you soon.
I'll
See you,
see
man.
you around.